Alright guys, we're back for our next bit of fun. We're going to be talking about our mid position again, but this time looking between the sort of 500 to 700k bracket. So there's a lot of guys in this position and it's going to be a really big video. So we're going to be starting with Alex Twal. Interesting one for him. I actually brought him into my team after the first 2 rounds last season. And that was good for the first few until he got injured, unfortunately, which you can see here has caused a little bit of an issue with his pricing, but mainly his minutes. So at the start of the season, scored really well, obviously 53 minutes in the first one, but then had a minimum of 67 with 3 80-minute games in amongst that for an average of close to 70, right? So the high 60s there. And then he got injured. He played the 29 minutes and got 30, so he's at a point a minute again, and then didn't play again until round 12. But you can see from there that he averaged under 60 minutes, so sort of closer to early 50s, right? And obviously he's not going to score as well as he did earlier. And when you see his price at 53, you can see that there's a little bit of upside there, right? Do we expect him to go back to bigger minutes? Was he playing slightly hampered? Like there could have been a chance that he wasn't actually at 100% fitness and therefore wasn't able to score as well. Because you can see when he came back, he was 56 in 50 minutes, 45 and 57, 50 and 53, right? He's scoring really well in those lesser minutes, whereas if he gets close to that 80 minutes like he did at the start of the season, then he can be a really good option for someone's team. I'm thinking at a minimum he's gonna score his 53, and there's a chance that he can average closer to 60 if he gets the bigger minutes. So he, I believe, is a much better choice than a few guys like Clemmer Tolman, Nathan Brown, these kind of guys. I feel like at a 40 or 50k cheaper price, he has a little bit more upside. So really interesting start with Twal. And we're going to move to Takayaho. And guys, just making sure that if you are enjoying this, please just subscribe and the like button. It's really appreciated. And I really hope you're enjoying them. As we go to Taukeiaho. So, average 50 for the season. Looks like there's a chance that he gets the goal kicking duties, but Lamb and Walker both do kick. So, something to think about there. If you look at his goals for last year, and he only kicked a bunch. There's nothing ridiculous, and he had a really good section through the middle here, right? So from round 7 onwards, for about 4 weeks, they averaged really well, and then a bunch of good scores again. See, some of the scores in patches, right? And for me, over a course of a season, you can get lucky and get him on a good run, but you can also get him at the start of the year, right? So he's averaging closer to 40 at the start of the season there. So for me, at that price point, I feel like there's better options, and even with the goal kicking duties, possibly, I don't see him as a great option. When he's not going to play 80 minutes, they're going to want to look to have someone else to kick goals on a regular basis. That's my thoughts anyway on him there. All right, interesting one now is Marty Taupau. So let me move along to him. So Adam Fanua-Blake moves on to the Warriors, and we'll go over him in the next as the next person. But Marty averaged 50 this year. He's averaged better than that in the past, and you can see in 2019 he did score a lot better. But when you look at minutes across the last few seasons, he does sit around that 45 to 50 minute mark, and you can see that he's done the same thing has happened in the past year. So a lot of 45 to 50. It's really low for most of the props these days, and I can see him getting a few extra minutes with Fanua-Blake going, but there's also the chance that he just sticks to the same minutes and just doesn't have the upside. But I feel like it's an interesting one with him. It could be like, all right, if I don't start with him, there's a chance I could bring him back in. Sorry, I can bring him in a little bit later if we see that his minutes are in the first round or two have that uptick. You might have a guy a middle price player in the rest of your team that hasn't gone as well, and you can move him on to someone like Taupau. But priced at 50, like how much higher do we think he can go? I think probably 55 is his ceiling. So for me, I thought about him for a little bit, but I think I'm going to have to leave him just for the fact that you can see over the past few seasons that that 45 to 50 was normal until you go back to 2018 where he did play close to 55 to 60 minutes, and you can see there's a bunch of big scores there: 180, 60 or 51, 70 and 81. Like, was absolutely killing it there, right? So he has that bigger chance of going big with the bigger minutes, but I think he's going to be a wait and see, but a very good option if he does happen to get the bigger minutes. And you move to Fernando Blake, and they're priced at a very similar number, averaging 49 for the season. And you see they decided to use Fernando Blake as their higher minute prop. So if that changes for Taupau, then that's great. But for me, I don't see him playing many more minutes than he did for Manly, that he is for the Warriors. So I don't see much upside for Fernando Blake. Coming off a couple of really good seasons, I think I see him averaging around 50. He just doesn't tackle as much as you'd hope for that type of player, for a middle forward, right? What you're looking for is around 40 tackles and like 150 meters with a few tackle breaks and offloads, and he just doesn't have those numbers in defense. What have we got? A highest tackle count of the year being 33, right? So he's not someone that's going to work really hard on that side of the floor. So yeah, not someone I want to be thinking about too much. Takayaho becomes an interesting one. 604k, priced at 45, which is much lower than previous years. I used to have him in years past where he'd be averaging mid 50s and sometimes 60, right? If you go back a little bit, even 2019 was a little bit better. Bunch of 50s and 60s, and 2018 was his year, right? We got 99 in there, 65, 54s, 82s, 73, 74. So he's got that in him, and you can see there was a bunch of games where he's playing around that 60-minute mark and a few bigger. You look at 2020, and he still played a similar amount of minutes. I just don't feel like he had the impact that he used to. He used to make a lot more breaks and offload a lot more. Right, and I feel like his plays dropped off a little bit. I feel like he was a better player a year or so ago, and maybe it was just in the Titan system where he slowed down a little bit. I'm not exactly sure. It's very hard to judge, but this is the cheapest you'll ever get him, and I feel like there is a potential upside for him to average at least 50. But again, is he going to be a season-long keeper? Right, that's the thing you got to think about. What's going to happen in the Rabbitohs pack is he going to lose some time to Cam Murray, for example, or some other player that's in that system? They've got a bunch of decent forwards now that he's come over, and they're an improving team. So how many, is he going to get that 60 minutes that you need? Is it going to be around the 50-55 mark? There's a few things to think about with him, but at the moment I'm also going to leave him. I thought about him in the team at 600k, such a good player, but decided against it with him for now. Adam Elliot we move on to, which is a really interesting one. Last year was his best year by far, especially at the start of the year. So he came out with a bang and was playing bigger minutes, had a couple of games at 80 minutes, a few in the 60s there. Obviously got injured in one of them, but because he got injured, he's priced at 44 for an average of 47. And when you look at those scores, you can see when he played the bigger minutes, so when he played 60 plus, sorry, that was 2019 now, only played 8 games for the season, right? 2 games at 80, he's got an average of 60 across those 2 games. Got a try in one of the games for 60 minutes for 60 points, 66 minutes for 58. There's a lot of upside for someone like Elliot, and he's someone that I'm tempted to possibly bring in. They're gonna, it's just hard. It's hard to think what's going to happen with someone like Luke Thompson, who's come over. He's got his little start. He had played a bunch of games, and you'd think that he's only going to have some improvement from here. Will Elliot get those minutes? That's my worry. If he gets those minutes, he's worth it 100%. So if you're thinking about him throughout the start of the season or in the preseason, you can see that he's going to be a big minute player, or Thompson's going to play in the front row or whatever, as they obviously have lost Tolman as that bigger middle forward. So Thompson might take that, or Elliot could take that. And at 596, he's an interesting pick of someone who could at least average 50 or slightly above. So we're just going to wait and see on Elliot, and now we'll talk about Thompson. Luke Thompson at 583. So came in priced fairly high at that 550 mark, and And you can see it took him a little bit to get into it. He was playing big minutes at the start and average around that 40, which is just the PPM's not good enough at around that 0.7. And then the next couple of games, really good work ethic, 43 tackles in each in 50 minutes approx, and over 100 meters gained, which put him at a point a minute, which is great. And then he's had a quieter game to then get 41 in 50, and then point a minute, and then slightly below in the 2 games to finish with a 66. So he does have some potential to score really well. And again, someone who's priced at 44, I can see him averaging 50 this year. You lose Tolman, bring back in Elliot after the injury. And I see both those 2 guys being a focal point in their middle forward rotation, playing bigger minutes. So again, there's a little bit upside, and they're both, neither here nor there. It's just Thompson probably has that, now that he's played 10, 11 games in a COVID-affected season, there's a chance that he's going to increase and improve on that. And same with Elliot, having sort of broke out a little bit last year and come into the fold as a big minute player for the Dogs team. But who knows what that team's going to look like, if I'm honest. They should be slightly better, but I don't see much improvement from them this year. Maybe in next year when Taukeiaho comes in. Tino, the one that everyone's going to have, right? You can see he's obviously had a lot of games that have been minutes affected. The first 6 games of the season, the highest amount of minutes he had was 40. And it's someone that scored a bunch of tries across the season. So he's got, I believe, 7 tries there across the season. So you can expect that I could expect at least 5 tries in the season. He's that type of player that's in the game and running hard at the line. But just what we're looking at here, I know a lot of people already have him in their team, but we'll go through it anyway. When he gets the bigger minutes, 80 minutes for 58, 50 and 60 minutes for a 67.86, which is huge, 42 and 71, so a little bit slower, 46 and 69, 40 and 54, 64 and 49, 60 and 53, all with tries. So look, he's going to have upside, and I suppose if you're looking at him and going, okay, he's now locked down, he's got a spot locked down, he's probably going to take the 13 position, but we'll see. How many minutes is he going to play? Will he play better in that position? I can see him averaging 50. Again, he's probably got, it's interesting because most, like 35% of people have him, but he probably has a similar / slightly better upside to guys like Elliot and Thompson. So I can see him averaging just over 50, but I don't think it's going to be crazy. He'll probably finish the year at like a 750k player, just because he does have some inconsistencies. And I guess he didn't have to be the focal point in the Storm system, and he might have to be a little bit more in here, but he's someone that doesn't make a shitload of tackles, right? Which causes that inconsistency. If he doesn't run as well, or he doesn't get the tackle breaks or offloads, he'll have a lower game in the 40s. Hasn't got one game at 40 tackles. 36 is his highest. So, sorry, I scratched that 40. He got to 40 once, but that's where I don't see him becoming like a top gun at 800 plus. And with him playing Origin, it's gonna be an interesting one. It might be the Smoky that doesn't absolutely kill it in fantasy, but I also could be wrong. I think I will be starting with him though. Just you wouldn't want to miss out if he goes absolutely bonkers when he's playing up there. An interesting one for me is Cory Horsbra. Priced at 42 with an average of 48 last year. He was in my team. I started with him with Bateman being out. There was a good chance that he was going to play big minutes, and that he did. He was sort of looking at around 50 minutes plus a game and scored really well in that. He's someone that really tackled hard, which was important. You could see, mid-30s, even a 58 tackle game, 40 tackles there, and then played limited minutes. So he played limited minutes in 2019, but you can see that 16, 17, 19 tackles in his 20 to 30 minutes is what you'd be looking for a middle forward. Someone that tries his best, runs hard, and loves an offload. So my question with him this year is where is he going to play? Is he going to be a starter or not? There's a good chance that he's going to be on the bench. So Hors, we're going to have to wait until team list for him, but very much an interesting player, priced at 42, which I think could average 50 and give you 100k or so upside from there. All right, interesting one now is Radley. Where is he? There he is, 524k. Price to 39 with a 2020 average of 43, which included getting injured, right? Getting a 9. So averaging closer to 46, and is in a bigger minute role in the lock position. You can see in the first few games there, 24 for a slow start, but then 67, 53, and 65, and 47 in 50 plus minute efforts. So really, really good scores for him, and there's a chance that he goes back to that. Our only issue is that he's out for the first few rounds. So from what he said on a podcast, I believe a few days ago, he should be out for the first 3 or 4 rounds. So interesting one there, and something to think about later on. All right, this fella Christian Welsch is actually going to be my smoky for this position at 536k. Really interesting one for me. Is priced at his average, but let's look into it. Right, so at the start here, very much lower minutes. Yeah, similar to Tino in terms of how many minutes, and he was playing, let's say, a lesser role. And then you can see as the season gets on, he's averaging closer to 50 minutes, right? And playing as many or even a little bit more minutes than Bromwich, starting a lot more games. And then you can see how well he did in the finals, but also, playing for the Maroons against the Blues there. Becoming a focal point as a middle forward. And he seems like someone who's a smart player. He's not giving you many errors and penalties, and just doing a really good job for your team. And I think Bellamy's liking that. And as you can see, the change in his role. I was looking into it, and Bromwich was still there. Brandon Smith was still there. Tino's there. Nelson's there. Right. So there's all these big forwards, and he'd still garnered big minutes, especially through this back end. Right. So if you just look at those last bunch, we'll go from the finals onwards. So 42 points, 52, 61, 56, 34, 65, 51, 40, 47, and then a few 30s in there with those 50 minutes. So someone who's averaged 40, I think there's a chance that he can get closer to 50 if he's playing that 55 minutes approximately, scoring at close to a point a minute. So really interesting thoughts on him. There's a chance at that sneaky low price in that middle there that he can become a 700k plus player, and then you can move him on come Origin time. It could be like a 10 round play to score close to 50 and get up and make some money. So the guys in this position, I find him really interesting. I think Alex Twal has some upside. We got blokes like Taupau who possibly has some upside. Arrow is a chance at averaging 45 to increase from there, and then you got Tino and Horsborough to go with Christian Welsch. So really interesting position, guys. I know there's 3 spots in your main team, but then you should have maybe a 1 or 2 on the bench. We've also got guys like obviously the big dogs like McInnes, who's a dual position, and you could play in between hooker and mid. It's really stacked, right? There's a lot going on, and what we'll see in the next videos, there's a bunch of guys in the cash cow position as well for the mids that could make this even harder to choose your players. So I feel like you got to be really selective in this mid position, and it might be that you don't spend as much money just for the fact that some of the other positions aren't as strong, and you might have to spend up a little bit in those, but something to think about anyway. But we'll go through that a little bit more as we get closer to season starting off. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. There's a lot in it, and we'll see you in the next one. Have fun.